Hello, my little wet wipes, and welcome to another episode of Dirty Willy with Fulta Burstyn, where we learn all the parts of Shakespeare that you never learned in school, but you probably learned at a sleepover at your best friend's house sometime when you were about 12. So today we're going to look at this odd little play called All's Well That Ends Well. Now, it's a strange little play. It's not quite a comedy, and it's not quite a tragedy, and it's not quite funny, and it's not quite sad. It's an odd little fart in the canon of Shakespeare, but I kind of find it fascinating, especially this strange little scene we're going to look at very early in the play. Now, let me set this up for you. The play centers around Helena. She's this sweet little girl whose father's died recently, and she's had to go live with the Countess of Russillian in her household. And the Countess is a widow, and so her son Bertram is the Count of Russillian. It all takes place in French. It's very cultured, very sexy. So, the problem is that poor little Helena's in love with Bertram, and she doesn't know what to do about it, because she's poor and he's rich. Good luck, girl, it's not going to happen. But in the beginning of the play, Bertram has to go to the king, and he has to go play butt boy to the king, because that's what counts did at that time. They had to stick around and wipe his nose and other various parts. And Helena's all distraught because Bertram's leaving, and it's so sad. And he takes off and he says his goodbyes, and he goes off to the court. And then Bertram's best buddy comes in, Parolles by name. Now, Parolles is kind of an asshole, as you'll find out shortly. So Parolles comes in and he sees poor little Helen sitting and diddling herself and weeping in the corner, and he looks at her and he says, "Save you, fair queen." Sort of the Elizabethan version of, "Yes, queen." And she says, "And you, monarch." And he says, "No." And she says, "And no." So you can tell the dialogue's already sparkling with wit, right? And so Parolles looks at her and he says, "Are you meditating on virginity?" Now, what kind of dumbass thing is that to start a conversation with? I mean, this poor girl's sitting there all alone, and he says, "Are you meditating on virginity?" Not, "Can I get your Kleenex? Do you want a drink?" Nothing. Just right down to the private parts. But Helena's a pretty smart little girl, and she says, "I." And then she looks at him and she says, "You have some stain of soldier in you." Stain of soldier, I can only imagine what that is. Anyway, she says, "You have some stain of soldier in you. Let me ask you a question. Man is enemy to virginity. How might we barricado it against him?" And he says, "Keep him out." Typical dumbass male, his answer is, "Cross your legs." Jesus Christ. And she looks at him and she says, "But he assails. And our virginity, though valiant in the defense, yet is weak. Unfold to us some warlike resistance." And he says, "Who's surprised? There is none. Man, sitting down before you, will undermine you and blow you up." So he's talking about war, but really he's saying a man, if he gets down in front of you and underneath you, he's gonna impregnate you and blow you up like a balloon. Ugh, not a pretty sight. And she, instead of saying, "What an asshole thing to say," actually plays along. She says, "Oh, bless our poor virginity from underminers and blowers up. Is there no military policy how virgins might blow up men?" That's a question for the ages, huh? And he says, "Virginity being blown down, man will quicklier be blown up." In other words, any man who sees a virgin is immediately like, blown up, yeah. And then he says, "Mary, in blowing him down again, with the breach you yourselves made, you lose your city." And side note, go look up breach. This is one of the most disgusting little answers I've ever read in Shakespeare. But he goes on, blah, blah, blah. And finally he says, "'Tis too cold a companion, away with it." And she says, "I will stand for it a little, though therefore I die a virgin." She is a little bit of a drama queen, but she's a smart one. And he answers, "There's little can be said in, 'tis against the rule of nature." I mean, this guy just won't let go of this bone, if you know what I mean. And he keeps going on, and eventually he says, "Virginity breeds mites much like a cheese, consumes itself to the very paring, and so dies with feeding his own stomach. Now, if that's not the most charming image I've ever heard, I don't know what. Your virginity is like stinky cheese that rots itself up. Disgusting. So finally she says, how might one do, sir, to lose it to her own liking? I'm surprised he didn't run at that, because any young girl who says, how about if I just do it the way I want, I'm surprised he didn't freak out and shrivel up and die right there. So eventually he gets to, your date is better in your pie and your porridge than in your cheek. And your virginity, your old virginity, oh, now he's getting at the old folks. Fire. He says, your old virginity is like one of our French withered pears. It looks ill, it eats dryly. Now, anybody who talked about my hoo-hoo as being ill and dry, I'd deck him right there. But he goes on, Mary, 'tis a withered pear. It was formerly better, yet 'tis a withered pear. Will you anything with it? And she finally says, not my virginity yet. And he finally gives up and he goes off with Bertram and they go off to the court. Now, as it turns out, Parolles gets his in the end. He gets his ass kicked by his buddies. And poor little Helena ends up winning Bertram. She marries him. She gets pregnant by him. And all's well that ends well. Unless you're some dumbass little kid named Bertram. But who cares? It's all about the young girls doing it her way. And let's toast to that with Dirty Willy with Fulta Burstyn. We'll see you next time. Made from withered pears.